What's up, family? It is your man, CRB Jr., Courtney Robert Brown Jr. here at Motown Mafia Podcast, a big boss Filmworks company that is and project. And I am here with the other half of Big Boss Filmworks.
What up? It's Lou.
Big Lou in the house. You know, we done brought Lou out of the shadows.
Yeah, out the studio.
You know, and he's alive. He's alive, ladies and gentlemen.
He lives.
Hope the family doing all good. Before I get into this thing, make sure you guys are hitting that like, share, subscribe button. Make sure you hit us with the comments. Love the comments.
Yep.
On that, before I even get into this.
Yes.
You know, in the comments, there's always inevitably, and we love you all, a commenter who will be chronicling some of the, the dope stuff in the bag and the money's made, money's spent, time done, yada, yada, yada. And they'll say, stop glorifying this stuff. You guys destroyed the neighborhood.
Yeah, we get quite a few of them.
Family, you gotta know that's absurd, right? There's no black man involved in the streets or hustling that has anything to do with why urban America or the African American situation is where it is at. Most of them have never left the country. So if you want to look for the culprits, you would want to look at the people who actually bring it in.
Yeah.
Right? B, if we have our military, our government has they found Saddam Hussein in a cave underneath the ground.
Foxhole.
Right?
Right.
Does anybody really believe that if the authorities wanted to stop narcotics from entering this country, they could not?
Just as much as guns, just as much as fentanyl.
I mean, our country is an exceptionally wealthy, powerful nation with resources beyond belief. To believe that 20 illiterate Mexicans are behind all this shit, and that a couple brothers who happen to buy them a Benz or Bentley are somewhere the contributing factors. Our neighborhoods are the way they are because of lack of investment, poor schools, systematic redlining, the remnants of Jim Crow laws, the transfer of wealth of African Americans who worked for 250 years for free in this country. People are going to get high. They locked up Eddie Jackson and them and the crew and Pops and them and Nicky Barnes and Frank Matthews fled and Goldfish. They locked them up in the 70s. Oh, but then there was YBI and more drugs in the 80s and then the crack era in the 80s. Then they locked up Kevin Childs and Freeway Ricky and all the other guys in the crew in the 80s because they were the baddest people in the world, They were Nino Brown. But to quote Wesley Snipes,
this thing is bigger than Nino Brown.
Really think about what Brother Mario Van Peebles and those people in New Jack City were trying to say when they wrote that in. This thing is so much bigger than Nino Brown. What they were trying to tell the world was this drug thing. It is a multi-trillion-dollar global industry. Narcotics are a commodity. People will get high. Women will sell their body. Men will pay for it. This will not stop. You cannot legislate it away. They tried it for some insanity with alcohol and made drinking a beer illegal.
Right.
They made a shot of whiskey illegal. People gonna drink. It's not the Italian and the mob's fault. They're not the reason why people become alcoholics. No more than the people who own Budweiser and Hennessy, which, by the way, alcohol kills more people than heroin, cocaine, and all the other illegal substances put together combined. By the way, just for those worrying about destroying the community thing.
Absolutely, and it's a choice. At the end of the day, it's a choice.
It is a choice. But anyway, just had to get off. Bro, don't please. I mean, you can keep saying it. You can keep telling me that, the brother Jazz, if you watch that, the doc that Dame Dash and those guys did, Mr. Untouchable. The Nicky Barnes. One of his crew says it best. He said, man, we were nothing but we just street peddlers. I know to you guys and to a lot of people, the Eddie Jacksons and Nicky Barnes and Frank Matthews see, but in the big scope of things, those guys aren't even pawns in the game. At our biggest run, when we were doing that Pakistani plug making M's, we was like bandits, renegade bandits, sneaking out a couple bags of marbles, getting $2 in the big scope of thing. Now those guys who are up in the mountains in Pakistan talking to the authorities of all they were playing at a whole different level. Those of us who spoke about our crew down there in the Bahamas who's friends with the president and of countries and things like that. But no, we're not the problem. Anyway, we got a story, a little content we want to show, talk about. Yeah. A show I think you did turn me on. I did
turn you on to Ozark.
So
I was going through my Breaking Bad withdrawals. And I just on Netflix I hit Ozark one time and I saw it was the story of a money launderer and his family, and who better to watch the show
than a retired money launderer.
Absolutely.
So watching it, you'll get it. Those who have not followed the show on Netflix, Ozark, it's greatly written show, great acting. Storyline,
We're going to get into spoilers, so if you have not watched it, you may want to shut off, but if you have...
yeah, but I mean, I'm not even going to go in that deep, I think, into like giving up the storyline outside of what you already said, that it's a story of a real square guy who's doing some money laundering, which most of the money launderers in the world are square guys.
Yeah.
But they are businessmen. And as he gets more tied up in dealing with the cartel, his situation just spins into some real crazy situations. So those of you who don't know, please read Big Man on Campus or go back in our archives. What are some of the posts we did about me? The Real Miami Vice.
The Real Miami Vice Money Launderer.
The Real Miami Vice Money Launderer that I really kind of go into detail.
Also there was another one recently, the Cocaine Cowboys of I believe Detroit. The one I did it about maybe 5 months ago.
Yeah. Right when they did the new Cocaine Cowboys.
When the new Cocaine Cowboys came out.
So for those again who don't know, in my employment at the services of my father, my main job once I started working for my pops, and I worked for my dad from 1986 to the year 2000. After the initial breaking into really once he got out of jail in the 80s and learning how the family business worked, him and his friends and the rest of my family, they did not need my help moving the bag. they had that part of the situation that I could have only gotten in the way or got myself in trouble.
They were naturals.
But as fate would have it, Dad would end up meeting a guy by the name of Basil Miller, based out of the Bahamas, Mr. B, as he's referred to. He's a whale, international level guy. And he would end up moving the bag. Him and Mr. B would end up moving the bag from about the end of 86 to 89. But old boy is based in the Bahamas. So this is, of course, in the heart of where Miami is ground zero for the whole game. This guy did business with Carlos Leder, one of the people who helped the Medellin cartel, Escobar's crew, set up that whole base down there at Norman's Cay in the Bahamas. But anyway, he would need his money brought to him. So at times, we would get the money to him. Also, its names and places have been changed, but if you read, you can get Big Man on Campus. It's on digital book right now on Amazon. Soon will be available on paperback, but you can check that out now. I kind of go into it. We had to change some names because there's still a lot of people doing a lot of things that we didn't want to put on blast. But anyway, but during this era, old boy down the islands, Mr. B would need his bread. And I would have to, Pop enlisted me to start. We would do it a couple ways. It began the old-fashioned way. we just fly the money out of the country, convert suitcases, put in false bottoms, all the normal money laundering kind of things, to be able to avoid the bags being searched and detect that there was 50, 80, $100,000 in the bag. Well, on one of those fateful trips, they didn't put Junior on the ticket, and the computer came up, thought it was my dad leaving the country, caused me to get pulled off the plane by the DEA. I go through this whole investigation, despite a really long story. I had not done, me and my man Speedy had not done a good job. It was a last minute run to get this bread down there. We didn't put the money in a false bottom in the suitcase, and this would happen to be the time that the DEA pops in. They pulled me off a plane on my way to the Bahamas, searched the bag, find $80,000 in it. Then they figure out that I'm not my father. All right, sorry about that, family. A little technical difficulties there. So after the DEA has pulled me off the plane and gone through this whole thing and threatened me with the end of the world, and a very long day in my life, about 3-4 hours in DEA interrogations. Obviously, I get out of DEA interrogation. They actually took about $9,000 from me, told me, welcome to Miami Vice. They make arrangements to get somebody up there to get the rest of the bread from me in Miami. I come back to Detroit, explain to Pops what happened when it's all worked out. Old boy who in the islands who had grown kind of fond of me has decided that he still wants me to run the point on getting him his bread, but I can't come back down to the islands because, as he said, I had been compromised. So he knew some bankers. This is kind of like, again, if you follow Ozark, the character Marty in Ozark, who was at the time when it all begins a financial advisor.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And he is laundering money for a Mexican cartel family. One of our commenters, remember one time I said something about money laundering, and he was like, you just lost 90% of your audience. But I don't believe that. I believe you guys do understand that the people who actually get the money to move from point A to point B in the game are the ones that allow the game to continue.
That's right.
If you're dealing with people at a certain level, they're not necessarily always into somebody just handing them a bag of money. Their business model doesn't work like that. So, oh boy, in the island is like, check this out, you can't come down here directly anymore. So I've got some Jewish bankers in New York that do some services for us. I'm young. I'm like, 22.
Oh, okay.
This is maybe 3 years after prom, 3-4 years after prom. Yeah, it was after my junior year. It was in between my junior and senior year in college. So, as we called it, the internship. The internship has gotten real as hell. I got pulled off the plane by the DEA. It's gotten crazy in my life, right? And I was like, damn, I was at prom yesterday. It was homecoming. Now Pops.
What did your father say after all this happened? When he found out that you had almost gotten popped over?
I mean, Pop. I always say one or two things really should have happened. Pop or Mom should win the Parents of the Year.
Okay.
Or they should have been arrested for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. But we are all products of our environment. Pops was not, it was a day, it was basically like, boy, this is a day, to quote the Hiram Roth character in The Godfather, boy, this is the life we have chosen. And this is what happens to people in this life. Now, he already gave me the pep talk before I started, taking the money down the islands, like, don't get it twisted. What you are about to do, when I'm asking, Pop, so this is real family. Pops was really real with me. So he had broke me in kind of slow when he first came home. Only thing he would have me do, answer the phone, maybe pick up somebody, pick up a crew member, take them there. Never really touched the bag. Never even really had me in the room. Later, you know, he might invite me over when they would be hooking up. They'd be at the hookup table.
Okay.
Hitting the pack. When we say the hookup table, that's actually when they got the preparation bag and preparing for it to hit the street. He would tell me to come over when they were at the hookup table, kind of introducing me to the fellas and the crew and who does what for us and, who's. And then he started having me drive around the city with him, and he started introducing me to all the different players in the street. Kind of explained to me who's a big fella, you know.
Who to stay away from.
Who full of shit, who you call if you in trouble, who gonna get you in trouble. So, and then by 86, 87, so he'd been home about 3 years, he comes to me with this situation, that what he's got going on in the Bahamas. And before that first trip down to the Bahamas, he was like, you know, we thought this out, we do this. We know what we're doing. I know what I'm doing. My man in the Bahamas knows what he's doing. Once you get to the islands, it's completely under wrap. My man got the airport unlocked, yada, yada, yada. All we got to do is get the money past U.S. Customs. You're not hot. You ain't never been arrested for nothing. Should be a layup move. But he was very clear. If something was to go south and you were to get arrested, you would be charged with money laundering. And you would be looking at doing time. And if you ain't up for that, of course, you know, he's like, we'll do everything we can. You got a clean record. But he's like, I mean, it is what it is. Money laundering is a Class A federal offense. If this thing goes sideways on you, you know, you could be, we'll do what we can, but you got to know, kid, that if this shit goes sideways, you could be looking at going to jail, going to prison. You know, at this point, life was life, and
he did give you a choice whether or not to do it.
Oh, for sure. He was like, yeah, you can definitely go. It was very clear. You can just go back up to campus, take you out of student loan. I'll still love you, and I'll still support you. But if you want to ride around this town like you do, spending $1,000 a day of my money, literally. If you want to spend $1,000 a day of my money,
which would be about $10,000 now
today, a $10,000 a day lifestyle. I was living in '87, you know, and sleeping with everything with size 40 double D's that you think is attractive, and that's the life that you want to continue to live. When we need you, and right now we need you.
Yep.
So, you know, and not that I was like some square kid. I mean, my dear friend Eddie Jr. I'm not gonna put it all off of him, but you know, Eddie Jr. had me in some mischievous shit. All while Pops and them was in jail into the '70s and the '80s. You know. Yeah. You know, Eddie Jr. boy, he a piece of work. You know, he had already had me in a bunch of, and I think looking back on it, that was, I guess Pop was like, boy, you're already committing Class A felonies running around with your friends, so, which was true.
Right.
Which was true.
Right.
I didn't know, but he had already knew, like, that I'd already been running a Yale ring up at school. So, I mean, I ain't trying to put it off. I was, all right, let's just be honest. I was already out there. I was already out there, and all while, by the time he came home, we had already knocked off 20, 40 felony transactions, so it wasn't. Well, anyway.
Right.
Anyway. So Pop gives me the spiel. If this thing goes sideways, you get in trouble. Eventually, things did go sideways as when the lawyers debriefed me to kind of go over exactly what had happened, why the DA pulled you off the plane, what did they say to you, how did that whole interrogation, what was said during those 3 hours of DEA interrogation. They had assessed that although I had been compromised, the Bahamas-Detroit plug had not been compromised. That this was a one-off. The DEA had caught me, but it was not a prearranged investigation. I was not in part of an investigation. They didn't know what was going on. It was simply they thought it was Courtney Brown Sr., not Jr. They thought they were catching Courtney Brown Sr. leaving the country. And that cost me. So anyway, old boy in the islands talks about he's got these Jewish bankers to handle some things for him. So those who watch Ozark, again, the main character was doing the money laundering. So I would have been the guy who gets the money to a guy like Marty.
Okay.
Right?
Right. Which you did.
Which I did.
Yeah.
So if you watch the show, numerous times there's a truck or somebody pulls up and it's got these duffel bags. And, well, in their case, the cartel, I was dealing with duffel bags of money. These guys on Ozarks are dealing with 18-wheelers full of money. But they get the money to Marty, and then Marty has to go and set up to buy casinos and buy businesses and
river boats.
So I went to New York and they gave me the information. I'll never forget. It was right there, like on 6th Avenue, Avenue of Americas, and I look at the address. I'm looking at the address. I'm looking at the building, and it's like Salberg Investment and Advisory, and I'm looking at the address and I'm looking at the name, and I'm like, wow, this is the place that I'm supposed to give them the money. I walk in there, I ask for the owner, secretary, nice blonde, pretty lady, who says, "One moment, sir." Owner comes out, takes me to the back. And when you go back, the office just looks like everything else in Midtown Manhattan, nice and fancy and legit. You go to the back, it's like a card table with 4 fold-up chairs around it and 1 ticket counter and a couple calculators. It's a great reenactment actually of that scene.
Oh yeah, it's in Motown Mafia.
In Motown Mafia, the documentary, we do a reenactment of that scene. And wow, but did it? I mean. The lights came on. I saw beside. I was like, oh, this is all a charade. The bankers are the ones behind this. And that money would probably never physically touch the Bahamas. Mr. B owned things all over the world, and him and his friends at a whole different level up from us back on the block in Detroit. That money would show up in their investment portfolios or in their checking account. Minus the fee, right?
Yep.
But it was a lesson, and if you watch Ozarks, it's a real, it's Hollywood, but it's a real true depiction of the reality of how these things operate. There was a line just in the last episode, 2 lines that you should think about when you talk about this. Those of you who've watched the movie Scarface, if you analyze the movie Scarface, you realize what got Tony Montana.
It was all about the money laundering.
The money laundering is what causes them their whole problem.
Yeah.
There's the scene in there where the white banker is telling Tony, "Look, Tony, I got to charge you more for your $5 bills because can you imagine what a couple $1 million in $5 bills? A couple $1 million in hundreds is actually can fit in a duffel bag.
Okay.
$1 million in singles and fives, you need Foot Lockers, bunch of them. It's a big deal. People, I know if you never dealt with lots of cash, you never even think about shit like this, but large amounts of money in small denominations create all kind of problems. All kind of problems. In fact, back in the day, when Eddie was, when Dad was running. Well, yeah, but one of Dad's main responsibilities for Eddie back in the day was just taking all that street money, because Daddy was paying the tellers at all the local banks.
Right.
He dropped them off $200,000 in street money in dollars and fives, singles and fives. He'd come back the next day. He had set up a business account. So Daddy was early on teaching me the rules of money laundering 101. First is you get rid of small bills and you turn them into large bills. So when Jap says Eddie didn't keep singles and fives in his pocket, all he kept was $100 bills, and Jap's joking. He's like, it was like Eddie had all the $100 bills in the world. Well, that's because the pops would used to take all the street money and he would pay the tellers more than they would make working for the bank because he had a business account. He'd drop off $200,000 in street money, come back the next day, pick up $200,000 in $100 bills.
Oh, see, I'm thinking about, when you first said that, I was thinking about the time Eddie took the, what was it, singles?
$400,000 in singles and paid a tax bill with it.
Yeah, gave them the flux.
Yeah. So that time, Eddie said, "Don't, Berman, I need these singles for a minute." We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that breakdown of that newspaper article. Eddie just they don't make him like the Fat Man no more, man.
Nah.
Different kind of guy. So yeah, the lady in Ozarks, Wendy, Marty's wife, says her daughter's saying something about. She's trying to explain to her that we've got this foundation. Basically, we've been able to launder enough of our salary. We've set up this nice nonprofit. The family's going to be clean and legit. We're about out of the game.
Right.
And her daughter's like, no, they're always going to know. And Wendy's like, look, girl, grow up. It's America. No one knows. No one cares how you get your fortune. Right? And if you remember the line in Scarface, 2 lines in Scarface. So when he's going back and forth with the banker who's telling them, Tony, I got to charge you more on your singles, your 5s, and your 10s. Mm-hmm. And Tony gets mad and says, fuck this. I'll fly the money straight to the Bahamas myself. I was Mr. I'll fly the money straight to the Bahamas myself.
Yeah.
Right? But, of course, what's the banker's response?
Yeah.
You're going to trust those monkeys with $20 million of your hard-earned money, Tony? But, of course, then Manny comes to him with the, don't worry about it, Tony. I know this guy, Seidelbaum. He's connected. He's got his own exchange. Mm-hmm. And the scene where Tony is arrested is a similar scene that I'm talking about that we were doing where you're just sitting in a room. It's a ton of money. It's some old white guy counting money. You give him the money. He gives you a check. Everybody goes their separate ways.
Yeah.
And then there was later, during the Pakistani run, man, same kind of complications. So our connect, Muhammad, daddy's man, Muhammad, who's orchestrated this incredible run that Pop had from 92 to 97.
The Nigerian connection.
Nah, the Pakistani play.
Oh, the Pakistani play. Oh, Muhammad, yeah.
Muhammad, that's Ota.
I'm thinking of Ota, yeah.
Well, again, and that was another one where we had to, that was when I got into buying computers and typewriters, and actually the first company I ever started was African Nights.
African Nights.
Which was a reason for me to justify all of these African phone calls and transactions that were going on between me and the Nigerians in my father's behalf. Yeah, that's how it all began. So that's, of course, how I ended up going to New York, was the DA pulled me off the plane. That forces me to start to go to New York, leads to me moving to New York, which, of course, changed my life. So all the stuff you hear that happened while I was in New York. And I can thank the DEA for that. They're the ones that changed my life on that one.
And Miami Vice themselves.
So, but no, Mohammed's crew, they're the ones that they had some guys down in not in the garment district, but the fabric district, Lower Manhattan, like Chambers Street, Manhattan Street. Textiles, kind of right? Yeah. So there was a variety of different ways that Muhammad would want to get his money. Every blue moon, he'd send one of his carriers to Toronto or Mississauga.
Okay.
Pops would send somebody up to Mississauga to just hand them the money, get it over. We're right here at the Canadian border. Other times when his people would be in New York or California and the transaction would be going down a small amount, you never want the money in the bag to be in the same room, because that's just amateur hour. You don't do that, because why lose? If things go sideways, why lose everything? But the main way was either through a money order system, getting 100 units of $1,000 money orders, and he would provide the names, and then just FedEx or UPS out the money orders. Or he had some people that ran these textile facilities down in Lower Manhattan.
Okay.
And the crew would get me the money, because I'm based in New York. They'd get me the money, and I'd take the money down to these guys in Lower Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And I told you the time, I had shorted the bag. I had a lot of issues in my late 20s, early 30s. So I don't know. It was like supposed to be 100 large, and I think I was turning in like 88. It had been a
You was having some fun.
long weekend. Nels.
Nails.
Blame the nightclub Nels. Yeah. A weekend at Nels had gone really sideways, but it was a really good weekend. A $12,000 weekend. But anyway, so I go to tell old boy that I think my colleagues are expecting 100 to be exchanged, but it's only 88 here. And he looks at me, and I've told you a story a million times. He says, young man, and this is a middle-aged white man looking like probably your local librarian or your fifth grade English teacher. Mm-hmm. And he just looks at me and he says, young man, those are issues internally between your organization. I provide a service. Whatever you give me, I'm going to give you a receipt for. And I pass it on to your colleagues. And then he points, this Nigerian, this African woman. There's a Hasidic Jew, the guy with the black hat and the long beard. Mm-hmm. And there's like this Arabic woman wearing a bunch of really expensive jewelry. And he looks, he says, I provide the same service for them that I provide for you. It's not my business how much or where it comes from. So, man, I say all that to say, yes, watch Ozark. Great story about a family of money launderers.
Definitely.
Believe it or not, there are people with pigmentation who actually have dealt on that level where people need that service. And they, and even so, lessons say there's all levels of money laundering too. And so there's people at the level that I was handing them the people, but then there's people above them and people above them.
Yes.
All the way up or all the way down from those people at Chase Bank and Wells Fargo, who, inevitably every 5 years they settle like $1 billion money laundering. Wells Fargo, like they're consistent. Like every 5 years they settle a money laundering charge. But when you're truly at the top of the food chain, like the international bankers, they do what they want to do.
Yeah.
They do what they want to do. But yeah, check out Ozarks. Pay attention next time you're watching Scarface. That scene where they kind of discussing how people overtake that fictional character Tony Montana's woes all started by him.
Yeah, we got to go into a deep dive with Scarface. There's a lot of stuff that just people will say I watched Scarface 100 times and then it's still something that they haven't picked up.
Right. He tells Manny after the banker, listen. No, he tells Manny while the banker's there. He says, Manny, be quiet. You can learn from this guy. And he says, and when he leaves, he calls him a wasp prick. Mm-hmm. Oliver Stone was trying to say WASP, which stands for White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Yeah.
Those are the people who run the world, run this country for sure. Mm-hmm. They're the founders of this country. They're trying to tell you in that scene, Tony Montana ain't the one destroying the neighborhoods. It's that WASP banker who controls the neighborhood, and whatever shape your neighborhoods are in, it's him who pulls the strings behind it. So Oliver Stone and Brian De Palma were trying to say a lot of things in Scarface. A lot of people get caught up just in the opulence of it all, but
the pageantry.
they're saying a lot in Scarface. So
big time.
Black Ozarks. It's your man reminiscing his days as a money launderer. By the way, family, that was a long time ago. That was talking about in the late 80s, mid 90s.
Yeah.
Over 25 years ago. Long time ago from the middle-aged, boring businessman that I am now. But there was a time. There was a time. Yeah, man. Shout out to everybody. Make sure you guys are hitting that like, share, subscribe button. You got anything else, Big Lou?
Yeah, if you can, right now, go to Facebook, follow us. Go to Instagram, follow us. He's on Twitter, Big Boss Films. Check it out. And more importantly, Motown Mafia Podcast, wherever you get your podcast, especially Spotify.
All right, there it is. It's your man, Lou Stevens, CRB Jr., Courtney Brown Jr., Motown Mafia Podcast, Big Boss Filmworks, doing what we do. Holla at your man.
Big up.
it was just time to really tell a great untold Detroit story, because it kind of covers Detroit at its zenith.
Very interesting story.
We decided that we were going to make a movie.
All right, Rich Rossi with you with Motown Mafia. I'm with Courtney.
Lewis Stevens.
Courtney Brown.
Courtney Brown Jr.
And Alan Al Prophet Bradley.
And this is an entrepreneurial, inspirational story too, because again, you know, I'm a real estate retail guy. You know, that's what my skill set is. But I'm a businessman, so I was like, you know, we're gonna do it. You know, sometimes when you got a dream, you won't have all the answers on how you're gonna do what you're gonna do.
What made this one unique was not so much the crime, but the intertwining with Detroit's history and the Motown era and kind of the economic decline of Detroit. And it's really the story of a family. And from some perspectives, has a happy ending, like you said. For others, it didn't have a happy ending.
Right.